Hello, everyone. Good afternoon from Lagos, Nigeria. I hope you're all doing well. Please let us know if you can hear me. It will be very nice to know. Please drop a comment in the chat letting us know where you are joining us from. Hello, hello, hello. I see some people have started to join live. So just give a few minutes. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the live session. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So let us know where you're joining us from. Okay, I see a few thumbs up, hand clapping emojis. Yay, amazing. So if you can let us know where you are joining us from, that would be nice. In Lagos, Nigeria, by the way. And it would be good to know what we have on here. Okay, I see people joining in. Welcome, welcome. All right. Because we have such a short time to talk about a very, very important topic, I'm going to jump right into it. But please feel free to do the introductions in the chat. Let us know where you are joining us from. But welcome to this session about making the switch to communications consulting. And I'm going to be doing this with Anna. Hello, Anna.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Oh, good afternoon. Yes.
Thank you so much for joining me to have this conversation. I'm totally looking forward to it. Just for people who don't know who we are, so that it doesn't feel like, who are these people? Why are they speaking to us? My name is Adedoyin Jaiyesimi. I am the co-founder of the Comms Avenue. I also work as a communications advisor. I've been doing this now, working as an advisor for almost 8 years. I had my own brand consulting agency. I will tell the story, but basically, I work with organizations to really help them to leverage the power of strategic communications for reputation management, to boost organizational performance. And I absolutely love what I do. And I also have with me here Anna, who has 14 plus years experience working in media and comms globally. And for the past 4 years, she's been consulting from the Gambia. But let me just pause. I'm seeing some intros in the chat. Hello, Esther. Hello, Yvonne. Hello, Anna. Hello, Ibai from Cameroon. Hello, Dorcas. Hello, Gertrude from Zimbabwe. Hello, Chukwukem from Abuja. We're so happy to have you here. So today we're just going to be having a conversation. And one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation, those of you that follow me for a long time, you know I like to keep it real. Some people think that, Adedoyin is working as a communications advisor. She's chilling. She has all the time in the world. I see her going to the UK. She's going to Kenya. She's having all the fun in the world while I'm stuck in my company. And I wanted to just have this conversation to really bring you to the behind the scenes of what it means to work as a communications consultant, but also to help you if you feel like this path is for you, because it's really not for everyone. And so Anna and I will be talking about it. But I'm going to start off with sharing how I found myself in the world of communications consulting. For anybody here that has read my book, From Clueless to Success, you will know that I got into it very cluelessly. So I was working it was a 9 to 5 role, but I was working part time, right? And then I was doing side gigs. Can anyone relate? You're like, this money I'm earning is not a lot. Let me take on these side gigs here and there to support the income that I'm earning. And it just turned that I had a bunch of side gigs. I was getting burnt out. I wasn't even making the money that I thought that I would make, right? And then one day I just said, you know what? Let me try and consolidate all of these things, like make it even a bit more formal. So I took a break. So the 9 to 5 job, I was going part time, and then I switched to consulting. So they became a client, quote and unquote, right? And then I took a break, and then in that break, I attended an event and I got a request for proposal, RFP, to manage content and comms for one of the leading banks in Nigeria. At the time, I didn't have a business. I was still just thinking about how am I going to make this work. And then in doing that, part of the requirement was needed to be a registered company. And that's when I quickly had to go and register the company. But that was pretty much the start of my consulting journey. And I had that client as my client from day one till when I shut down the agency. It was so interesting, but that is really how I started in my own journey. So let me ask you, Anna, how did you make that switch? So past 4 years, you've been doing consulting. How did you make the switch?
Thank you so much, Adedoyin. It's wonderful to be here. So I made the switch. For me, it was an intentional move. So I wasn't new to business. So I had been running a business in the UK. I had my own media company, which I was running for 4 years. But in 2019, my family and I moved to Gambia. My husband is Gambian, my kids are Gambian. So I had been here for a couple of years, but I felt that I was, physically in Gambia, but mentally at work, I was still in the UK. So I really wanted to be able to embed and, really work here and be more connected with the country. So I sold that media company in 2021, and in 2022, I decided to open my own consultancy. So I'm a former BBC journalist. I had also been a director of communications at a UK NGO, a couple of UK NGOs. So I knew I had the skills to offer, but I'd never consulted before. So that's how I got into it. And initially, the first year or so, I obviously wanted to build up my portfolio. So I took on the clients that I was able to secure. But then as time has gone on, and I can talk more about this, the prospecting process, the pipeline is all evolved. The services I offered initially have also evolved. So I think there's also recognition that if you start consulting, you know that your business is going to change over time. You know that maybe what you're interested in right now is not what you might be doing in 4 years. So yeah, my services have evolved. The type of clients I work with has also evolved. In this webinar as well, I can also speak about the prospecting process because I had to learn the hard way. The business I had in the UK, it was a media company, so it was a magazine. So I had to learn, how to sell. But when you're running a consultancy, and I love what you said about, it's definitely not, it's not the easy route. And we may not be in an office 9 to 5, but, you have to sell at every opportunity. So, I might be at a friend's party and I meet someone new and they're asking about the services I offer. And then, that's a moment that you have to have your elevator pitch, you have to have your sales pitch. So all of that stuff is stuff I had to learn along the way. So I can speak about all of that in today's webinar. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really, really happy to be here, and amazing that you have people from all across the continent joining us. It's really lovely to see everybody.
Well, Anna, thank you so much for sharing. And something that I should add is, as we go along in this conversation, while we cannot hear you, we are monitoring the comments. So please, if you have questions, if you're like, Adedoyin, Anna, I'm not so sure about this, please put it in the comment section. Or if something resonates with you, please let us know. Something that really struck me about what you said, Anna, is that you went from another country to another country and started. So this is a terrain that you're not familiar with. This is a culture that you're not familiar with, and you're starting a new business. So I want us to start from the very, very beginning. What were some of the practical steps? First of all, I want to ask you, were you afraid? Then number two, what were some of the practical steps that you took when you started? And then I would also share my own thoughts as well.
Okay, practical steps when I first set up the business. Yeah. Okay, so the first thing you have to do is find your first client, right? And whether you might have, jumped in and decided you're doing this full time, or you may still have a job on the side. So you have to decide. I think the first question is, how much capacity do you have? Like, how much time do you have to offer these clients? Because of course, and we all know this as comms professionals, your reputation precedes you. Your reputation is one of your most important assets. So you don't want to jump in and take on 10 clients if you don't have time to manage them all. So the first thing I did, I started slowly. I started with one client. I met with her. I was honest about the fact that I'm just setting up. I think honesty as well is another incredibly important thing to have on this journey, to build trust and integrity with your prospects and with your clients. So one thing that I noticed early on was, and I can talk a bit about the services I offered. So, I'm a former journalist, a director of communications. So initially, I was offering PR strategy is something I felt very comfortable in, obviously media relations, also managing the production of audio-visual assets, videography, also photography for any kind of owned media campaigns. But it quickly became apparent to me that I needed to broaden my skill set. So that's another thing to consider if you're thinking about opening a consultancy. And it depends on the market you're in. Gambia is incredibly small. It's a very small market. And when I first started, I was only consulting with clients in Gambia. As my business has grown over the past 4 years, I now consult across the continent and also internationally. So obviously my market has expanded. But at the time, you know, with a small market, you have to have many strings to your bow. You have to have many skills. So I actually decided when I set up the business, one of the first things I did was build a website for myself. And I had never built any website in the past. And I say build, I designed it. I use Squarespace, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. So that, you know, there's no coding required. I was designing it. And obviously I did that. And I had no budget at the time to do any marketing. And, you know, so I was basically building my brand from scratch. And one of my first clients asked me, who built your website? And I said, well, I did, but I'm not a website designer. And she was like, no, that's one thing I really want. I want you to do that for me. And I was like, okay, well, I'm self-taught. So just to be completely honest and transparent, she had no problem with that. And we went ahead, you know, of course, we created an entire digital campaign. We did a media campaign, and the website was part of that entire package. And she was my first client. And from then, you know, it continued to grow. But I think the important things when you're starting out are really to, if you're on a shoestring, you know, there's nothing, you know, you can absolutely achieve a lot with zero budget or very little budget. I think you also have to be very clear about your value proposition. If you're in a 9-to-5 job and you're in a role, then I think there's a level of comfort there that you understand your position, you understand where you fit into the company. But when you are branching out as a freelancer on your own, you have to be able to communicate to people why you are unique, or at least what sets you apart from the rest of the market. You know, what's your USP, what's your value proposition. So you have to, like I said, work on your sales pitch or your elevator pitch, meaning that, you know, you've got to be able to sell yourself within, let's say, a minute to people in terms of what you offer, why you do what you do, why you're passionate about it, and what kind of clients you like to work with. And the key, of course, with prospecting, and I learned this as I did more and more prospecting, is you have to keep asking questions, right? Don't talk too much. You have to be a really fantastic listener, and you have to really engage in active listening. And by that, I mean, you know, when someone says something, don't just wait for your turn to speak. You know, you have to absolutely lock into what they're saying. You're basically trying to establish, okay, what's the problem they've got? You know, what's the issue they're facing, and how can I, as a communications consultant, help you overcome that issue? That also bleeds into how proposals are formed as well. So what I normally do when I have an initial meeting with a prospect is you sit down with them, you know, obviously you're asking questions about their business or their organization, but you're ultimately trying to find the problem they have. Like I said, what's the problem and how do you offer the solution? And when you leave that meeting, what I normally do is create a proposal. And now I follow a framework. You know, the first time you do it, it all seems very new, but now I have like an established framework. So, you know, you give them it doesn't have to be a long proposal. It could literally be 3 or 4 pages. And, you know, you start with the situational analysis. Okay, these are the issues you said you face. Then your proposed solution, this is how I can come in and help you solve those problems. And that ultimately is at the core of every business. It doesn't matter whether you're a consultant, whether you're selling a product, you have to meet your customers or your clients' needs. And you have to frame yourself and position yourself as the person who can help them do that. So what they're interested in is they have a problem, they need someone to give them a solution. They don't want to have to think about it too much. They want someone who's a self-starter, who's independent, who can, you know, give them ideas and be creative and work alone. And, you know, that's what you have to offer them as a consultant. But yeah, I'm not sure if that's helpful. But
I'm sure
yeah,
it
that's
is.
how
Like, I'm seeing
that's how I
comments
kind
in the
of,
section.
yeah.
Amazing.
Oh, I see
So
someone said, love, don't talk too much. Yeah.
yes, and Joyce says good
We,
one. And just to
yeah.
really add on to, you know, what you have just shared, because honestly, everything that you said is really, really valid. The truth about it is that working as a consultant is not it's not necessarily easier, right? It's not that, oh, you know, you might not even have all the time in the world for yourself because your clients may need you it may be demanding. But one of the first things that I would say is you need to have clarity as to why are you doing this? Am I doing this because I'm truly passionate about this? I'm passionate about serving the clients that I want to serve, or is this I just want to make more money? I think that, as a consultant, I will make more money than being in a 9 to 5. May or may not be true. So that clarity is very important. And what that clarity also does is that you also then introspect and say, what are my strong selling points in terms of my skills, which Anna had said, being a journalist, when I first started, my strongest suit was in terms of writing and content development. So my brand communications agency was literally called Content Craft. We were just offering content writing, content distribution. That's really what we were doing. But then as we went along, we started getting briefs. People wanted end-to-end briefs, right? They didn't just want us to create the content. They wanted us to plan the PR, do the PR around it. They wanted us to do beyond what we were offering and doing. At the very beginning, I was partnering with people. So if somebody needed PR services, for example, I'll partner with someone that could do the media relations and all. And then we got stranded on one of the briefs. It could have been a disaster. But because, again, another thing is just being able to think on your feet. The client has already paid. I could not go to the client and say, actually, client, so I wanted to collaborate with this girl, but she's not more answering her phone. So here's a problem. I had to really think, okay, Adedoyin, media relations, this is an event. You need journalists to come, journalists to cover. You have to pitch. Pitching is not my strongest suit. I always tell people, but when push comes to shove, I really need to do it. And I went for an event, I just saw journalists. I just walked up to them and said, look, I'm having this event. I would like to invite you. And say, oh, okay, this is the arts desk or the art beat. And they gave me, all of them came around, they gave me the contacts of their colleagues. That was how I was able to get journalists and press to come from that particular event. So I learned as I went along, but just even realizing now is that clarity at the very beginning as to the services that you want to offer. What is your strongest suit? And you know how sometimes they will say, oh, take on the brief and then you will learn how to do it later. It might bite you in the foot as a consultant because, like Anna said, your clients are looking to you for answers. If you really do not have the answer, please do not pretend because it can be very disastrous. And when you're just starting out, your reputation is so important. If you start off on a wrong footing, not delivering the result, it can actually affect your reputation because I'm sure, Anna, clients speak. I don't pitch, but I get, in fact, 95% of the work that I do is referrals, and it's referrals based on results. So you really have to be that person that is saying, what are the results that I want to achieve? And the last thing that I will add is please be as professional as possible. You heard Anna when she said she built a website. It was the same thing that I did. Me, I didn't even have a company when the request for proposal came, but it was part of the requirements. So I quickly went to register a company, get a corporate account, because there are organizations, they are not going to deal with you as an individual from a corporate governance perspective. So you have to go and register, even if you're going to call yourself. So some of you know my mentor, Shola Abulu, her business literally is called SA&A. So it can be your name, but it has to be a corporate entity so that doesn't limit you in terms of the kind of clients you're able to have. And then when they now check you out, what are they seeing? So you need some sort of website. And the good thing about the time, I've heard about Squarespace, I haven't used it, but Canva, you can design a landing page on Canva. So you have tools that can help you. You can develop a professional portfolio and profile, because those things really helps to build some sort of credibility. So those were some of the things that I did. Now, Anna, you had started talking about positioning yourself and getting new clients. And I know you spoke about a framework. How do you filter? Because when you first start, so there's two dilemmas, right? And I faced that. So when you first start off, you want to just do as many clients as possible so that you can show in your brochure a stream of logos. But I look back and I was like, was that the best strategy? Because I was burnt out. I was not doing work that I was happy with. So someone just starting out and saying, look, I want to be in certain spaces. What strategy would you advise them to adopt at the very beginning? Now, of course, there is no one size fits all, but we can just introspect from our journey and share what we think would work best for people.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I know we were speaking offline about this yesterday. I think, yes, initially, of course, you, in the early days, you're right, you absolutely want to build up your portfolio. You also want to, establish your credibility as a technical expert in, whatever services it is that you're offering, whether it's media relations, whether it's comm strategy, whether it's website design, whether it's content creation, whatever it is that you are offering to your clients, you also are trying to establish your authority as a thought leader and also as a practitioner in your market and in this space. But I think absolutely, as time has gone on, so I've been running the business for 4 years. I was telling you yesterday that last year I developed something called a decision matrix, because I had reached the very fortunate and privileged position where my pipeline was something that I no longer had to chase after clients. I no longer had to do much prospecting like you. A lot of my work comes through referrals now, but obviously it takes time to get there. I see some people in the chat are asking how you get your first client, so I'll touch on that later. But when you reach a point where you reach a point where you have a lot of opportunities coming in, you need to be a bit more intentional about what you take on. And I would say actually that, in fact, I wish I had been more intentional from the start. And that's not to say that I regret any of the projects I've taken on, not at all. But I think if I had had this decision matrix 4 years ago, then I may have made slightly different decisions, and it would have ultimately benefited me and everybody else. So I think right now I have this document. There's 2 columns. There's like a must-have criteria in the first column, and there's an ideal criteria in the second column. So I have like 3 things that I would that are non-negotiable, like must-have criteria for, let's say, an RFP comes in, or someone approaches you saying, I need something, I need a media campaign, I need a global media campaign for my product launch, right? Okay, so there's 3 things that have to be ticked, basically, as far as I'm concerned, if I'm going to take this client on. And in terms of the ideal criteria, then again, I have a list of 3 things, but at least 2 of those need to be met. So and one of those, of course, and you touched on it, Adedoyin, is pricing. So you also have to decide as a consultant, what is your ideal price point? Now, I think initially anyway, there has to be some flexibility, because especially as a new consultant, you may have to accept a lower price point than maybe you might be normally used to in your full-time job. So it really is a myth that, especially initially, you're not necessarily going to earn more as a consultant. You may be incredibly lucky and get a big contract as your first gig, but there is going to be a period where you're going to have to build up. The more experience you have, the more of a broader portfolio you have, then you can start charging more. And obviously, the thing is, as a consultant, you have the ability and the freedom to set your price point. If it's too high for someone, they'll go elsewhere. But you can position yourself as the luxury choice, or the high-end choice, and with no shame or anything. That's just the way it is. So I think the price point as well is also part of my matrix, and I know what level I would like to be at. And if it doesn't reach that level, there has to be a very good reason for me to take that client on. And the more work I do, the more now these days I'm drawn towards kind of bigger communication strategy projects. So what you're talking about, Adedoyin, that end-to-end approach, where it's no longer as interesting for me just to be working on a PR campaign. I want to be talking to the CEO. I want to be talking to the people in the organization about how we can elevate the entire communication strategy to achieve those organizational goals. And then I'm finding myself being drawn much more towards social impact projects as well. And no surprise, that's my background. So I think it's having those that list of those things that you're not willing to negotiate on, and a list of things that you would love to happen. And if you have that in a document, and you don't underestimate the power of writing it down as well. Like, it's one thing to have it sort of swirling around in your head, thinking, oh yeah, I think I'd quite like to do this or this or this, but I wouldn't accept XYZ. If you write it down in a document, it's so important, because you can refer back to it. If you have an opportunity that comes in for some reason, you're overwhelmed with whatever else is going on that day, you can just go back to the document and think, yeah, actually it doesn't meet all of the must-have criteria, so I'm not going to take it on. So I think, yeah, as your business progresses and as your consultancy progresses, and this might feel very far away if you haven't started consulting yet, but the day will come where you'll want to curate the opportunities that you say yes to, because your time is your most valuable asset as a consultant. And that is really the highest value you have. So you've got to accept only things that you want to accept.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to continue from what you just said, your time, because, and I always like segment my career to before I went for my master's and after I went for my master's. And in my master's program, we did have a module called Communications Consulting. And they taught us about the value of 1 hour of your time. What is 1 hour of your time worth? And in European countries, they have this concept called the billable hours for people that practice law and all of that. We don't really do that in the African continent, but I adopted that model, and I will tell you how it has helped me. But when I first started, in terms of, because I see some questions already, and I'll try and answer as many as possible. Getting my first client, like I told you, what happened was I had gone for a conference, right? And this is how I thought about it. I was very, very socially awkward. A lot of people, they see me and say, oh, I didn't know this, but I sometimes I could be socially awkward, meeting new people, pitching. It wasn't my strongest suit. So I said to myself, what kind of money do I want to be earning? Because remember, I told you I had a bunch of freelance gigs that brought together, they were barely even covering my monthly bills and my expenses. So I had to sit to myself and say, Adedoyin, how much do you want to earn from this that will make you feel really happy and proud? Because I know that I do great work. And that's something that I must also add, because someone was asking about what kind of strategies do you create for clients. First of all, you need to go and learn your work as a comms person, knowing the strategic communications framework, knowing best practices, right? Because it's in diagnosing and understanding what the problems are that you can then develop the solutions and the strategies. But back to the story. So I sat down and said, how much do I really want to be earning? And then who can pay me this money? Because what Anna said is very important. Not everybody will be able to pay you whatever price you determine. And there's no standard. In this work, I think I shared it in the book that I wrote, that I was offering a service and I met somebody somewhere that was charging times 10 of what I was charging, and I was like flabbergasted. That, what do you mean you are charging times 10 and people are paying you? So yeah, people paying, you will find a client for each level and price point, but you have to really say, what exactly do I want to earn? And then when I answered that question, I then asked myself, who can pay me this money and where do I find them? And so I use what I call the community or network strategy. So I said, okay, this conference has a pool of the leading women that work with the leading institutions and organizations in Nigeria. I'm going to go there, I'm going to break in there and then offer myself in terms of my services and my value, and then use that as an opportunity to get new clients. And that strategy truly worked for me. Right. But still, I was charging the money that I was charging. Oh, Anna, you feel sorry for me. So bad. I was not earning. It wasn't, I could have earned like times 5 more than I was doing, because in terms of, the effort and all of that. But when I went to Madrid and then, I started to sit down, and you have to really sit down and think, guys, what she said about documentation is so important. This work that I'm putting, if I'm going to spend 10 days developing a strategy document, 1 hour of my time is worth what? And then 10 days. And then you think like a business as well. Even if you're working from home, you're paying rent. Rent is part of your cost. Your data is part of your cost. So you think about all of those things. And some of you may need to work with a team depending on the model that you want to adopt. And then when I came back, I told someone I'm going to adopt this. Nigeria, if people don't do per hour billable, do you know that some clients, the next client that I will get, I did the pricing proposal that I did, I broke it down. Strategy, 10 days, this is the cost. This 2 weeks, this is the cost. And the person negotiated based on that. So don't let anybody tell you that something is not possible. It's not true. It's because that person has not witnessed it in their reality. So you have to then determine how much do you want to charge? Where would I find these people? And you have to be proactive. In as much as I do not pitch, I'm very, very deliberate about the spaces that I get into. I'm very deliberate about talking about my work. So using LinkedIn, some of you that you don't like LinkedIn, please, you have to like LinkedIn, because you're going to be the one to talk about the work that you do. I got a client one time because I went somewhere, complimented someone on the dress that she was wearing, and then we got talking, and I was like, oh, this is actually the work that I do for certain people. This is how I feel that this can benefit you. And she was like, oh, in the new year, send me a proposal. So you also have to be very, very proactive about that in terms of your pricing, in terms of how you want to be positioned, in terms of, and don't be discouraged by the no's. Another thing that I do is I search LinkedIn for RFPs. Not that I answer the RFPs, but I look out for those RFPs. What are people looking out for? Is this an organization that I want to respond to? And that can really help. So I'm going to look through, because I can see we have a lot of questions. I'm going to try and scroll through. So Iwalola, I hope you've answered that question on where do you find your clients. In terms of how to price, honestly, there is no one size fits all pricing model. You really have to just determine how much. So this is how I think about it. How much time is this going to take me? And then what is this thing worth for me as Adedoyin? I am priced in the more premium, which is why I spent a lot of time developing myself professionally. I went to take certifications like the SCMP, became chartered because I wanted people to pay premium for my time and my knowledge. And that was very deliberate. And to God be the glory, I'm there. So you really need to ask yourself, where do I want to be positioned as well? So I want to see if we've missed any. Okay, I see some more questions. Are there comms consulting communities or professional networks that can help us learn from peers? Oh, Anna, do you know any comms consulting communities?
So there's one that I'm aware of that's run by someone called Ashley Dennison. You can find her on LinkedIn. She has a website called commsconsultants.com. At the moment, though, I think she's only working with consultants in the States in terms of, and she has basically created a platform which is essentially, a shop front for consultants in America who offer their services, and actually works with companies that come to her, and she's sort of, presents, okay, these are the consultants that are in my network. But what is great is that she, even though it's only for consultants in America right now, is that she posts some fantastic pieces of advice on LinkedIn. She also, I believe, has a newsletter on Substack as well. So if you key into people like her, and she always recommends other people on LinkedIn. But LinkedIn, Adedoyin touched on it, is the most wonderful resource. And if you're not already, I'm guessing everybody here is on LinkedIn because this event is being hosted on LinkedIn. But to anyone else who's considering consulting and is not on LinkedIn, I would really reconsider, because I get a huge amount of my work, I said, through referrals, but also via LinkedIn. In terms of finding clients, someone asked about how do you find your first client. Last year I decided to reintroduce myself on LinkedIn. We see these posts sometimes where people have, done a photo shoot and they'll talk about the services they offer, and it can seem a bit hammy, but it works. I mean, that's the truth. I from that one post, I got a huge amount of engagement, and I got one of the biggest contracts I have secured to date. So you also have to, and it's a vulnerable place to be in, but you also have to put yourself out there. You have to be willing to say to the world, hey, I'm here, this is what I'm offering. And then, you never know who's watching. And like I said, the people that you're trying to convince to become your clients, they're all people who have problems that they just want to be solved. So you are the person that's coming to help them solve that problem. So I think, put yourself out there, put yourself on LinkedIn. And I just wanted to talk about the pricing issue a bit more. So I actually use a monthly retainer model, which for me created more financial stability than offering a model based on deliverable. And obviously it depends, for when you go for those bigger UN contracts, they're going to ask you to give them a daily rate. But if it's not a UN contract, then if it's more of a private organization, then I tell them, okay, this is my monthly retainer rate. This is what I do tell them, I give them a list of deliverables. So within that proposal document I was talking about, like I said, you start with the situational analysis, you talk about your solution, you talk about the exact deliverables you're going to send to them, or you're going to give them, and then you talk about your methodology, and then finally you talk about your pricing. But for me, when I say to people I work on a monthly retainer model, it means that and they know as well that I am not only working with one client at any one time. So I may be working with sometimes up to 5 clients if I really want to be busy, but a comfortable number for me is three clients. I'm also a mom, I'm a parent, so I also want to be at home when my kids get back from school. So for me, that's a big advantage of consulting, is that I can be a present parent and I can choose how many clients I take. But yes, I say to them, look, I work on a monthly retainer basis. This is what I'm going to give you. But I'm also working with this person and this person at the same time. So I'm not sort of tied to them. I don't tell them, okay, I'm going to be working on your work from 9 to 12 on Monday. You know, I don't try and tie myself into those knots, because I find that then, you know, it's nice to have some freedom in terms of how you split up your day, who you work with. As long as you deliver what you say you're going to deliver by the time you say you're going to give it to them, that's the main thing. But yeah, I charge a monthly fee, and again, the people that don't want to pay that are not my clients. So you will attract the people that understand your model and respect your value and understand that what you bring to them, you know, is a huge asset. And I think that you've also got to have confidence in that as a consultant, even when you're starting out, that you have a huge amount of value to offer. You know, you have a very specific set of skills, and don't be afraid to shout loudly about what you can do and what you can offer people. So yeah, I just want
Amazing.
to add
Yeah.
that.
And honestly, everything, and I'm just nodding here, just because it's totally true. I'm even planning to do a new video to re-announce myself. You have to look, you have to shout about yourself. But it's interesting that you do a monthly retainer. And this is just the beautiful thing about this conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, you have to find what works for you. And sometimes in finding what works for you, you're going to do a bit of trial and error. So I was on that when I first started, I had that monthly retainer thing. But I found that, and I don't know if you experience this, scope creep. So you start off as, okay, this is what the deliverables are, and this is how much you're paying me. Then they say, oh, please, we quickly need. So it's like, okay, simple request. And then by the time you look back, you're like, hey, what's happening here? You're supposed to be paying for this. And so I really avoid anybody that's going to put me on a monthly retainer. You have to come correct with your dollars. I have no shame about it, but I tend to like project based, and also because of where I am in my stage of life, because I do advisory, I don't implement for you. And my time is very precious to myself. So I don't want anybody to tie me down. So I want to know this brief, how many months are we doing this? What is, and then so that it's, I say in and out. That's where I am at now, but that's not where everybody is. So please make sure that you are doing what is authentic to you. So we're sharing our experiences so that you can learn from it, but you also have to look at your context. What exactly are your needs? Why are you doing this? What exactly is the market like where you are? There's some markets that can pay considerably more than some other markets. But I just also want you to know that whatever price that you put, you need to think about where I am going to find those clients. Some of those clients are behind closed doors where you have to get into certain spaces, reach to them. You may not be able to pitch one-on-one to them. You might just be being in a particular conference, attending a particular event that gets you connected to them. So I wanted to look at some questions. I'm feeling asked, can one go straight to consulting without doing the 9 to 5 first? I feel like the answer to that is yes, but I always try to advise, try and do some sort of 9 to 5. And why I would advise that, because once you're working as a consultant, you cannot rub heads with anybody else. It's just you, right? And if you have a staff or a team, they're looking to you. So you are seen as the expert. So if you haven't developed your skills and your competencies, working as a communications consultant, you will find it difficult if you have not honed your ability to develop strategies, to advise, to think critically, to work under pressure. All of those things are the things that a 9 to 5 will give you, just really saying how those things work. So I personally will not recommend it, but that's not to say people don't do it. But I've also found that there are people that say they are consultants, they're just collecting money and they're not doing the work. So you don't want to fall into that. And I'll ask Anna to also chip in. I just wanted to take another question that I saw. I think it was Esther. She was saying that as you grow your clientele, do you now have employees, or it is better to stay as yourself? My first agency, because of how big the bank project was, I needed to get people. And that's something you really have to think about. Is this something you can do by yourself? I needed to get people. So I had a team of, we started as a team of 2 people. And by the time I shut down, we were about 4. Some 3 of them were full-time. Some we brought them on project by project basis. Right now, as an advisor, I work solo because it's mainly advisory, but I have people that come on board in terms of, okay, if there's a pass that maybe I need support in, maybe they want to facilitate something in regards to reputation management, I collaborate with people across board. So I don't have a team, but I have people that I collaborate with. I bring them on board to make it easier, because it can be a lot, especially when you're juggling so many clients. But what that means is that you also need to factor that into your pricing. How much am I going to be paying in terms of salaries? Do I want to put this person on on a monthly retainer, if you're just starting out, paying a monthly salary might not be feasible if you don't have a pipeline of clients. So it may just be on a project by project basis until you have a steady stream. So when you just start out, honestly, having a retainer, so the bank having them on retainer for 3 years, trust me, that was steady income. But there's another thing that's just coming to me, Anna, and I don't know if you've experienced it. When you submit your invoice, before the money comes in, sometimes we're owed 2, 3, 4 months. I kid you not. And that money does not come in. Yes, I just literally remembered. So you have to also plan against that, because corporates, they have funny policies. 30 days after you submit your invoice, that's when they pay. 45 days. And that can, you have really have to think about your cash flow. So Anna, let me let you chip into some of the questions.
Yes. Just on that point, so with cash flow, it depends on the client. I think you're right. If it's a really large corporate client, they may have their own contracts, so they have an entire team of lawyers that deal with all this stuff. But if it's a smaller organization, and I've tended, not exclusively, but I've tended to work with smaller organizations. So I have an agreement that I use as a template, and it basically, stipulates within that agreement that you both sign, I sign and the client signs, that they have to pay within a certain window. I think it's 30 days. And so obviously, you ask them to sign that, and so you try and kind of, I guess, communicate that payment has to be on time. And because I don't invoice, I mean, some people, the invoicing model that some people have is they actually invoice before the work starts. So they'll tell you, okay, this is the price, but that, I would say, works better if you're doing it on a deliverable basis or maybe an hourly basis. But for me, I invoice after, I've done, let's say, a month's work, I invoice after that month, and I will submit the invoice. And then, if I'm working with people for at least 2 to 3 months. I think someone asked in the chat a question about the length of contracts. So I found that I much prefer to do shorter term contracts. If you look at my LinkedIn profile, you'll see that I was never very good at staying in a job for very long. I think the maximum time I would stay in a job would be 3 years. And I knew that about myself, that I'd like to have different challenges. I like variety, and I've turned that into an asset as a consultant. But yeah, I don't tend to sign on for 6 months is really the limit for me in terms of length. But yeah, I also love, Adedoyin, what you're saying about scope creep. I had literally never heard of that phrase until maybe a year ago, and I laughed out loud when I heard it, because it's such a real thing. And I get very pedantic, and people outside of kind of our world might think that is you have to be so specific, but it's true. Because if you don't say, okay, I'm going to give you, I'm going to approach 10 media outlets, or I'm going to spend this much time trying to do an immediate outreach campaign for you, or you have to give them exactly what you're going to do. And you're right, something else comes in, they'll ask you to do something that's outside of your scope of work, and you're right, initially you have some good faith and you say, yeah, okay, I can do that. But then if the requests keep coming in, you have to be at a point where you can say, hey, actually, this is outside of what we agreed, this is beyond the scope of this particular contract. If you want me to consider providing this service, we're going to have to renegotiate, and we're going to have to draw up a new agreement. So you have to also be willing to say that, and to kind of stand up to your client as well, because you're absolutely right. That is one of the dangers of being on a monthly retainer basis, is that they'll just keep asking for more and more stuff. So you have to be ready to say no, but with caveats, to say no, not right now, but let's renegotiate. If you want that, I can give you that, but not in this particular agreement. So your time is really valuable. Yeah. But yeah, the other questions. Oh yeah, in terms of team, what was really interesting about what you were saying, yeah, I have a similar model to Adedoyin. So I hire freelancers on a project by project basis. So if I have a big project that comes in, I'll hire a team and I'll work with them remotely. And for me, that works really well. I want my business to be agile. I want, like I said, the freedom to be able to be at home with my kids, also to travel as well. So I don't want to be stuck to, I work from home, so I don't have a physical office building. My previous business that I ran in the UK, I had 20 members of the team. I went from managing a lot of people and everything that comes with, to really wanting to scale back. And I think for some people, though, they may want to have a completely different model. They may want to, once the pipeline expands to a certain level, once you've got so many opportunities coming in that you can't handle it yourself, you may want to go down the route of setting up, a full-time team, full-time employees. And so then you can take on many more clients, you can get much more work, you can expand your business in that way. That's just not the path I've chosen, but that is the path that some people want to take. And of course, in terms of scaling, and then, being able to secure contracts across the continent, even internationally, that of course has its advantages, because the bigger your team, the more you can take on, the more you can demonstrate that you can have, you can take on these big contracts. So I think, I would say that as well, that you might want to be working on your own, but you may envisage having an entire team, and both those things are valid. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that. And, for people just wondering, I think at the early stages, start connecting with people that have like-minded values, that you skilled people that you can trust, that you can bring them on board, and then you guys can decide, okay, how much you will be paid, because you don't want to bog yourself down with overheads when you're just starting, and the pressure of, oh my God, I need to pay this salary by the end of the month, and this client is owing me for 3 months. Trust me, that was headache that I dealt with. I never want to go back there. Well, Anna, see, we have so many questions. We have just a few minutes, but there's one I wanted to touch on. Where is it now? With regards to UN opportunities, asking for hybrid in office, and it's looking like it's more difficult. I would love your thoughts, because personally, I gave up on doing, because me, I was thinking, oh my God, UN, and then you would not hear back. I'm just like, please, I can't deal. So I just followed my own path in terms of, okay, these global development organizations, how do I position and get into those spaces where I can connect with people, and that has worked with me. So what I've also found is that, yes, there are the advertised opportunities, but there's a lot of opportunities that are not advertised. Honestly, I wish I can show you my LinkedIn DM, the kind of opportunities I get in my DMs from big organizations. This thing that you wrote resonates, because I share content on YouTube. Oh, can you come and do this for us? Can you come and, so that bit about putting yourself out there is so important. So I don't personally go after UN consulting engagements anymore. So, and I don't know if you want to chip into that question.
So I've worked with the UN a few times. So I've consulted with UNFPA, UNDP, and UNICEF. And anyone that has ever applied to a UN consultancy gig will know it's a painful process, and they love their bureaucracy, and it's a very lengthy, you have to commit to the application. Like you have to spend several days, if not a week, just working on the application. So there's that to bear in mind. Of course, with these bigger international organizations, you do also, you can also earn more money, basically. So of course, it's worth it in the end. I think in terms of where you find them, someone mentioned that they see fewer remote consulting opportunities. I think there's several great communities, again, on LinkedIn that advertise. And again, if you're interested in commerce for development, there's a lady called Liliani. I'll have to give Adedoyin her surname, because I can't remember off the top of my head. But she has again, a Substack email group. I think it's maybe $6 a month. And she sends out a curated list of, every week you get maybe 40 or 50 remote comms roles that are in the commerce for development space. So she's a great person. Again, once you find, once you find one of these people on LinkedIn, they'll often recommend, follow this person and this person and this person. So it's just about joining those dots and following the relevant people. I think, my experience working with the UN, my first consultancy with them was completely in-house. And the second two that I did last year, they were hybrid. So I was able to mainly work from home, but also I had to go into the office sometimes. So yeah, it does depend. I think, of course, we all know the international development sector is changing every day. There's been many pressures on it in the past year. And of course, the UN is facing huge funding issues. So I think that's all at play. We're also on the receiving end of that as consultants. So yeah, I think it's a tough terrain right now, but there are still places that advertise. I'll give Adedoyin the link for that lady on LinkedIn, so that she can share it with the community, and you guys can have a look at the stuff. And she also publishes, so she has the paid for version, which I think is about 40 or 50 roles a week. But then she publishes maybe like 10 or 15 of those for free on LinkedIn. So there's a lot of people that, like I said, if you find the right people to follow on LinkedIn, you'll start seeing these opportunities, these RFPs being publicized. And it's just about applying, and you may go through periods where you get nothing back, and that's okay. That's part of the journey, but you just have to keep going and keep believing in yourself. And like Adedoyin was saying, a lot of the prospecting initially, anyway, for me at the start of my consulting journey, was face to face. And the more you do it face to face as well, the more you have to practice your sales pitch, the more you also understand what you're offering and what you're interested in and what you're passionate about. And I think, I would really recommend, I love what she was saying about going to a conference. That is such a fantastic idea, because you're going to a place with multiple prospects, and you have to put yourself on the spot and keep practicing that sales pitch. And you never know, you might have 10 conversations that day, you might get one client out of it, or you may even get 2 clients out of it, but you've just got to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. I saw someone else ask about that transition, how do you move from 9 to 5 to consulting? And like I said earlier, I would recommend, if you are in a job, of course, being open and honest with your current employer. I wouldn't recommend trying to start consulting on the side if you haven't told them that's something you're considering. But start slowly. Like Adedoyin was saying, use Canva, leverage LinkedIn, go to conferences, speak to people, try and introduce yourself, build a simple website and say, hey, this is what I'm offering. LinkedIn becomes a really amazing tool later on when you do have a more extensive portfolio. Initially, as communications professionals, we know the importance of smoke and mirrors. We know that it's about the optics. You've got to present yourself even when you haven't got you haven't got a portfolio, you haven't had any clients yet. You've got to present yourself as like, well, guys, you've been waiting for me. Here I am. You've got to be confident, and you've got to just, like I said, be assured that you are providing a solution to a problem that someone has that you haven't met yet, but you trust me, you're going to help them on their journey in their business or in their organization. And we all know what a strategic, fundamental role communications has in every organization. So I think, have confidence in yourself and just start slowly. The revenue will come. It won't come immediately, but it will come. So I think that would be my advice.
I love that. And, it's really about also don't be pressured, because sometimes when people ask me, oh, how much do you charge? And then I say, look, don't be pressured by my chapter. What will I say? This is chapter. This is me years in the making. You're just starting out. You're probably not going to be earning the same thing that I'm earning. I was super deliberate about my choices and my decisions. So give yourself time, give yourself grace. I'm just going to answer 2 questions, and then Anna will wrap up because we're really out of time, but I'm so happy with the questions that we're seeing in the chat. So someone was asking about, making a decision between the longer term opportunities or having a bunch of short term opportunities. Honestly, Ange, it really depends on you. For me, for example, I position for high, high monetary value briefs, so that if I don't work for the next 3 months, then I'm good. So my first brief for the year, for example, I just started working on it. And what I'm getting from that brief, if I choose not to work for 2 more months, I'm good. I was very deliberate about that. Would I take some other side? Yeah, of course. I mean, there's not like too much money in my opinion, but I have done it in such a way that I have positioned myself in such a way that I can get those high profile briefs that, one the income from one can take me the whole year. That's the kind of thing I wanted personally. So you have to determine what works. At the beginning of your journey, it may be wise to have more clients because it shows like diversity in terms of your portfolio. But for me, if the cumulative of all your clients is not up to $500, I will be asking you, why are you burning yourself out? Because you're stressing yourself. You're not getting so much from all of these clients. So it really just depends on you. And you can hear from what Anna has shared, we've really optimized for our own unique context and what is important to us as individuals. And that's one of the things I love about working in consulting. I can make choices based on where I am, and those choices can change later on. At the beginning, I was all about the money, all about the clients. Now, peace of mind, flexibility is very important to me, and I optimize for that. Someone was asking about how to position Okay, I found it. So you're just starting out, you're passionate, but there are many global experts there. How can I set myself apart? Honestly, Tawanda, first of all, I think one of the ways you set yourself apart is in terms of your results. Yes, there are many experts, but I have an abundance mindset. There's room for me. There's room for me to thrive. There's room for me to succeed. One person cannot serve all the clients in the world. So how do you differentiate yourself? I did that by upskilling. I did my master's, went for the certifications. I was very aggressive with my upskilling. So when I go into those rooms, clients can see that I have the knowledge and it's backed up with globally certified, certification. And I was very, very deliberate about that. So you sit down and say, what is my strongest competitive advantage? And I wrote about this in my book. I'll be sharing more about the book shortly. A communications consultant's diary. What is my competitive advantage and how do I hone in on that and speak? So I identified my competitive advantage. I built on it and then I articulate that value in the spaces. But always have an abundance mindset. Don't ever feel like, oh, this space is taken. Is it like people need what you have? So we have about 5 minutes. Anna, how was this? I mean, I've been blown away by the questions, but I really have learned a lot. If you could just wrap up with, I wanted us to talk about challenges. Maybe that would be another session, but what would you say as your takeaway for everybody listening, as a takeaway for them to take out of this session?
Yeah, I think I would urge everybody, believe in yourself. It's a nerve-wracking thing to do, to make the jump from being in full-time employment to consulting, but I would really urge you to believe in yourself, have faith in your ability. If anyone's read any of Stephen Bartlett's books, he talks about skill stacking. So what you're just talking about, Adedoyin, we all have a unique set of skills, right? He in one of his books, Stephen Bartlett talks about Steve Jobs and says he wasn't the most wonderful computer engineer, but his specific set of unique skills added up to make, the company that we now know as Apple. So you all have something amazing to offer. You all have a unique perspective. I think have faith in yourself, have faith in your abilities. And like I said, just as well as believing in yourself, do not stop listening. Listen to what your prospects and what your clients are asking for. If you are a brilliant listener, you will provide what they want, and then your business can only thrive and grow. Yeah, I think that would be my advice.
Amazing. Thank you so much. What would be my own advice? I would say, so I'm putting up the link to the book, and you can see the link scrolling. But just to wrap up in that we'll have, what I would say is just be really clear. Be clear about your why. Be clear about what it is you want to do, and document. Have everything documented. Your processes documented. Your pricing, your contracts. Because we spoke about scope creep. I hedge against that using contracts, right? And maybe because I have a legal background, it's not difficult for me to draft a contract, but you can also connect with people that can draft you a simple contract. But really be clear about things, document everything, and build yourself. Build yourself. I found that the people that command the incomes that when people hear it, they're like, oh my God, there are people that are highly skilled. They're able to deliver great results, and you kind of want to be that person. And just be confident, right? Don't feel like something is ever out of your reach. Any client, no, just be confident about it. And then, you enjoy and have a good experience. There will be challenges. We couldn't go into the challenges. There are challenges, but I really do believe that with the confidence, the boldness, the skills, and me, I'm always putting the God factor. With God on your side, you can always make good success in this field. So that is it for us. Please, you can download this ebook. It's available for free download. I shared 10 lessons, and you can read it. I know there are a lot of questions here about certification. So I did the SCMP, which is the Strategic Communication Management certification by the Global Communication Certification Council. Those of you who follow me on YouTube, and maybe I should just post my YouTube channel, because I shared some of these things on my YouTube channel. You can get more information. I did share my certification journey, the process. So for those of you who may want to know about that, then you can get it from there. Then I became a chartered PR practitioner. That is by the CIPR. Very intense, let me just say, but I was happy that I went through the process, and it has a swing to it. It's like, oh, you're chartered and all of that. Remember, I was opting for a particular what you might call it, particular type of client. So I'm putting it in the chat now for us to read through. Not read through the YouTube channel, so you can watch my YouTube channel. And then any other questions that you may have, what we'll do is, Anna, maybe after the live, we can go through questions and maybe answer them as comments on LinkedIn, because we'll be able to
Yeah,
decide comments, because there are a
sure.
number of questions there. Well, thank you all so much, Anna. Thank you so much for your time. I've totally enjoyed our conversation. This.
Thank you so much, Adedoyin. Thank you for having me.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.